Phil, good evening.
Hi Matt, how you doing?
Very well, my friend. Thank you. I'm doing very well. A pleasure to be joined by you this evening. And as I do with all my guests, I don't like to steal their thunder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over to you and I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, Phil Jordan. I'm currently Group CIO at Sainsbury's, and I'm actually just coming to the end of that role. I retire in a few weeks' time, and I'm going plural. So I've got a series of non-executive jobs, including I chair a digital infrastructure PLC as well. But my main job is Group CIO at Sainsbury's.
Wicked. Well, we'll talk about some other elements later on, but I wanted to begin with a bit about Sainsbury's. So I'm pretty sure that if we've got any listeners here who are in the UK, they probably know who Sainsbury's is. But anyone who doesn't, can you give us an introduction to Sainsbury's, what it is, some numbers perhaps?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, hopefully people in the UK will recognise the brand.
Yeah,
We're one of the big four retailers in the UK. We're number two in terms of food and grocery retailing. We're also a big general merchandise retailer with our brand Argos. And again, anybody been around the UK a long time will know of Argos. But we're also a bank as well. We have a Sainsbury's Bank. And then we also own a number of product brands like Habitat and Two Clothing, sixth biggest clothing brand in the UK. And we also are the owners of Nectar Loyalty as well, which obviously is very synonymous with Sainsbury's. So I would describe us as a multi-brand, multi-channel retail business with a small foray into financial services as well. Just give you a sense of the scale of it. 30 billion revenue company,
wow.
2% margin. So it's a pretty tough business to grow and to keep profitable. And we have 180,000 colleagues around the country. A big business, big transactional business, as you'd expect from one of the big retail companies in the UK.
So probably rather ignorantly, I didn't realize the span of the business. So when I thought of Sainsbury's, of course, I know about Nectar and Sainsbury's Bank, etc., but I didn't know about Argos and Habitat. So that's something new to me. So yeah, great to hear about the scale of the business. But of course, we're here today to talk primarily about transformations and technology. So I would love to hear some of the transformations that you've led as a group CIO, and from such a massive business, right? 30 billion. It would be amazing to hear some of the transformations that go on at that scale.
Yeah. And look, I mean, I think like most of the listeners' businesses, right? The transformation's ongoing. It never finishes. It never really starts, never finishes. It just keeps going. I suppose some of the big ones to call out would be how we dealt with the pandemic. I mean, I think we're a business that, as your listeners in the UK will know, we're primarily a food business. That means lots of physical retailing in stores. We're also a big online retailer for food. And in the pandemic, we saw a doubling of our grocery online business in 2 weeks. So scaling that e-commerce shift, that channel shift away from physical retail to e-commerce took a huge amount of preparation and execution, a big transformation really as you constantly try and change a business that's over 150 years old, as Sainsbury's is, to becoming a modern day retail, online retailer. So one transformation is that channel shift from physical to e-commerce. Argos is a great example. Again, people who may not know, but Argos has been around in the UK for a long time. And we've sort of effectively transformed it from being an old catalogue business where you would spend hours at Christmas picking the things you wanted and then going to store. And now that's entirely a digital business. 90x% of our shopping missions on Argos start on a mobile device. We still have the ability to collect in store and pick up in store, and you can still go to Argos stores and buy in a traditional fashion. Obviously, not with a catalogue, but
Sure.
with a book of dreams now, not a catalogue. So
Yeah.
I think one big transformation has been that channel shift from physical retailing to e-commerce retailing. I suppose another big transformation has been data. We've been absolutely laser focused on making sure that we leverage the best data set in the industry. We think with the combination of Nectar and Sainsbury's and Argos and the bank, and we've got an incredible data set about how the UK, how we all in the UK, how we all live our lives. And we're really conscious of our responsibility with that data to sort of to prospect it and to make sure privacy is understood and well protected. But we equally know that we can anonymize that and monetize that data really effectively, and hopefully end up providing consumers with a lot more personalization in their choices, in their preference, in their eating habits, in the price. And that's another big transformation of coming away from a business that had quite siloed data, quite static data, to a business that commingles all its data, drives that data into an environment where we can make better decisions and use it to create better customer experiences. So, I could go on and on if I'm honest about it. It's endless transformation in a business that's really fast-paced, really intense, and operates at 2% margin, right? So you have to be pretty effective. You have to be pretty effective to operate at 2%.
So let's spend a little bit more time on the first point, which you said was about transitioning from away from a traditional bricks and mortar, let's say, and then the expansion of e-commerce, and then that was obviously proliferated by COVID, and I think you said it was doubled within 2 weeks the size of your online business. So what are some of the technologies, the underlying technologies, which support those business transformations? What's the technology transformation that feeds that business transformation?
Well, first of all, I'd say the tech transformation had to come in advance of that business enablement. Had we not invested as we had done, had we not been ready, it's pretty clear we would have failed throughout the pandemic. And actually, it was really empowering time for our business, I think, and our colleagues, because I think for a long time food retailing was, a little bit looked down upon, and all of a sudden here we were, our colleagues, not on the front line in the same capacity as health workers and social workers, but feeding the nation was a real rallying call for us and for the industry. And it was fantastic that we were able to be agile enough and to scale quickly enough that when that call came, it was unthinkable that we would double our grocery online business. We were picking somewhere near 1 million orders a week. And again, I don't know if your listeners know, but we're a business that picks manually. We put people in store at 3 and 4 in the morning, and we pick on your behalf and we deliver it to your door. And obviously, we've really, from a productivity perspective, we put a lot of technology into making that as effective as possible, but just scaling that really quickly. So in terms of your question, the technology transformation, first of all, has to come first. You have to be ready. And look, I suppose there's lots of things that play a role in that. Probably the single biggest enabler has been cloud. I think we're, people are surprised at this as a retailer, but we're a big AWS shop. And having very quick, extensible infrastructure that enables us to scale really quickly has been absolutely critical as an enabler. Obviously, our own platforms, and look, I won't list all the technology we use, but we make a lot of use of open source in the e-commerce space as well. Okay. So having our own engineering capability to be able to build on top of platform as a service from AWS meant that we had the core enabler and we had the engineering smarts, if you like, to be able to react really quickly. And actually, it was a really interesting combination, because I think that technology added to a really flexible workforce. A human workforce that we could move from Argos into Sainsbury's. That's what made us double our online business in 2 weeks. So, and actually, we have some competitors who do grocery online in a fully automated way, and they can't expand. They couldn't be agile because for them to double their orders meant building another fully automated warehouse, which can take, as we know, years. So, I think. I suppose the lesson around the technology transformation is, invest ahead of the curve before you need it. Cloud's clearly mission critical, really, I think, for a business like ours. And then actually having our own engineering capability. I have an organization of sort of 1,600. The vast majority of them are engineers. And we do a lot of software development because we need that agility. We need that capability to be able to react to what customers need and want. So, Yeah, so we're excited about that. But the technology transformation, yeah, I mean, lots of different products and technologies, as you might imagine, but cloud really at the heart of it.
Okay. And you mentioned there that elasticity and agility, that the cloud enabled you to make that transition so quickly. And I do often ask this question, and it may seem simple because there's a lot of stock answers, but I'm not sure if you led the transition to the cloud or if that was already part of the business when you took the reins, but when you were making that decision to think, okay, do we stick with on-prem, or how much do we put in the cloud? Do we go to the cloud at all? What are the main drivers behind that decision? Like, why was it that you think, okay, yeah, we need to make this move to the cloud now?
Yeah, look, I think coronavirus has just sealed the deal really, in terms of people recognizing the value of having that elasticity and that agility.
Yeah.
The journey to the cloud had started before I joined Sainsbury's. I suppose we've been accelerating it, and we're very close now not to having our own data centers at all. We will have some on-premise infrastructure, but we'll have that in the hands of our partners. So Sainsbury's will have gone from having maybe even a dozen, I can't really remember, a dozen data centers going back a number of years, to having none of our own over the course of the last sort of 4 or 5 years.
Right.
But the case is, I think we've made a strong argument that there's a cost argument for it. There's definitely a speed argument in terms of speed of execution and that ability just to lay down infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a quality of software engineering argument as well. There's no question that we provide. We have our own platform as a service capability that we developed on top of AWS that our engineering teams use and then co-contribute to. And that's undoubtedly driving consistency and integrity into our engineering disciplines. I think if I go back, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years, maybe as a CIO, there would have always been an argument about security and latency and all these other things. I think they've all been taken away over the last couple of years, particularly in coronavirus, right? When businesses were, pivoting on a sixpence to work remotely. We were one of those businesses. We're an Office 365 business. Pretty slow adoption of that, if I'm honest. That changed in 2 days, right? The whole company worked incredibly well, fully remote. Obviously stores were populated, but all our store support centers, which is what we call the HQ, basically pivoted overnight to work with Office 365 remotely. And that was probably 8 years of adoption just accelerated into 3 days. And again, you can't do that if it's not cloud-based, And then we've got a lot of software as a service across the piece now. I think from our HR systems through to our new supply chain systems, all software as a service running in the cloud. So we're not all there yet. We're not all in. We probably never will be. I suspect there'll always be some legacy applications that we won't have in the cloud. And we're not always software as a service, but we are very, very pointed that that's our, there's some key decision gates we go through as we look for solutions, and cloud-based, absolute nail it. And software as a service if we can.
Okay. Well, super interesting to hear about that. Great to hear it through the lens of someone who's been at the top of an organization and led that transformation. Right, that was amazing. So I wanted to spend some time on the actual role of a group CIO, and I don't necessarily mean what you signed up to in the job description or what you put pen to paper on, but it would be interesting for me to hear if there was one thing that you either had access to or that you could get rid of from your job, that one thing that you think, me as the group CIO, if I just had that one thing, or if I didn't have that one thing, it would completely change my job, and I wish I had it. What would you say that one thing would be as a group CIO? Putting you on the spot.
And picking one's going to be the hard thing. If we can, let's break it down a little bit about the role itself. I think the role of CIOs changed a lot in my time. I've done 38 years in the industry. I've done about the last 20 of them probably as a CIO. the roles definitely changed, right? I think if I go back 20 years, IT felt back office, felt it was about systems of record and about sort of, industrializing and automating businesses. I think we went through a period of time, over the last 10 years, really, that people recognize that actually your technology platform was how you engage customers and actually central to your customer experience. And I think we're at the point now where if the business hasn't realized that the core differentiator is probably technology and data, then they're not going to. I don't think that business will be around for long, right?
Yeah.
I think. So I think it's an amazing time to be a CIO because I think it's where it was back office, it's front office. Where it was a commodity, it's a differentiator. Where people sort of tried to sort of ignore it or just deal with it, people are engaged and want to understand it. So and I think the roles changed in that time. And I think nowadays, I've always felt that a CIO is a business leader that runs technology. I don't think it's a different role to the rest of the board. Clearly you have to have some interest and some capability in understanding what technology can do. But I've always seen myself as just another business leader. I happen to have the technology discipline and that ability to reimagine the business through the lens of technology. What's possible? What's practical? What's affordable? Yeah. These are really, I think, important CIO skills, and I honestly think now a CIO probably in the right sort of business that's being progressive. I suspect the CIO is probably the number one change leader in the business because you think the potential of technology to change a business. You as the CIO, that's where you need to be, leading from the front, and I've always felt that, and I think that's the core attribute and core skill of a great CIO. So I would say to people that that's what you should do. You should make sure you understand the business as well as anybody.
Yeah.
And then your job is to apply technology and reimagine how the business can be when you apply technology differently. So, and that's the essence of the role. Of course you have to do all the other stuff, right? You have to run great systems. You have to keep them up running, 5 nines. You have to run a very effective budget management process, be great with suppliers, run large teams, be an evangelist for agility and agile, and and obviously nowadays in any leadership capacity you need to be a real strong advocate for diversity and inclusivity. So all those things are in there, but the real core skill I think is understand the business and apply technology in a really, and reimagine how technology can be. To answer your question about one thing I wouldn't have, what worries me a bit about, I'm stepping away from a operational CIO role and obviously now and retiring. I worry a lot when cost becomes too big a play. Great businesses with great technology, right? They're investing in technology. They're replacing aspects of their business model that are manual or semi-automated with automation and data insights and machine learning. So I worry when we get into the sort of macroeconomic climate we might be going into, that boardrooms are fooled into thinking technology is something to be commoditized and squeezed and costs taken out. Because if you're unlucky enough to compete with one of the big digital platform businesses, I promise you they're not spending less on technology. Yeah. So the one thing I would take out is I would have taken out the constraints of cost consciousness when it comes to technology. Now, of course, we all have to run a budget, but I'm a big believer in technology as a differentiator, and you should be investing more in it every year.
So there's two things I noticed that link together there. So you were mentioning about how technology, every business is basically a technology business now. Unless you're doing technology transformation and the technology is at the center of your business, you're not innovating, building business models around technology to differentiate and innovate, right? And if that's the case, and that you're not investing in technology and board levels, see tech as something that needs to be cut, you're actually harming future growth and those new business models and that ability to run those businesses. So it's kind of short-sighted if there's a budget cut.
It's a great summary, Matt. That's my belief. I mean, look, I'm sure there are businesses out there that the technology doesn't quite play as central a role as you and I are discussing, but I can't think of many.
Mm.
I can't think of many. You go to any boardroom and ask what the strategy is. People will be talking about, I've got to know my customer better than everybody else. I've got to make better use of data and drive insight and action from that data. I've got to be cyber secure. I've got to have automated, streamlined process, be as efficient as I can be. Probably going to, if it's a customer facing business, they're going to be saying, I've got to be able to go and meet my customers where they want me. Well, that's all technology.
Technology.
You
Yeah.
show a business that does any of that in the 21st century that isn't using technology. So
Yeah.
I think there's a slight mindset shift still needed in this thing called technology is something to be managed and managed back into a box. Keep the lid on it. Don't let it get too expensive. On the contrary, my view is go looking for savings elsewhere. Invest in technology.
Yeah.
And I worry a bit. And I think we've had periods of time where I think that's true. I think coming off the back of the pandemic, the reason we had this massive spike in recruitment off the back of the pandemic in IT and technology was because every business came off the back of the pandemic thinking, okay, we need to invest. Even ones with capability. And of course, now we're into some tough macros, and look, it's a really tough economic cycle we're into now. There's no doubt the ones who come off the back of this, the best will probably be the ones who have the best technology capability and great people. I'm not saying it's all about, I've always believed, and we've always believed at Sainsbury's that, the perfect scenario is great people with great technology in their hands is the perfect scenario. So it's both. Yeah.
So with that in mind, then, that centrality of technology, you, of course, as a group CIO, you have the responsibility and are mandated to make sure that the best technology is being used at Sainsbury's, right? And vendors have a similar role, but in reverse. They have a mandate to make sure that you are aware of all those technologies and, possibly buy it. So how did you find that relationship as, throughout your time? And what I'm really trying to understand here is, how do you like to be engaged by vendors? How do you wish you were engaged compared to how that maybe has happened or is happening now?
Yeah, so this is we could talk about this for hours, couldn't we? Let's again break it down a bit. I suppose to a certain extent, if you're talking about sort of software or hardware product selling, I've made it really clear I haven't made one of those decisions for years, and nor would I want to. Right? I have lots of great people who are far more equipped to choose technologies than me. Right? And if I'm having to get involved in technology A or B, then something's gone wrong, I would say. So first of all, on the buy side, on our side, I think you have to be a really intelligent customer, right? So you have to have the structures and the people in place to make these choices. I'm never a big believer. I've never been a big believer in enterprise architecture. So having some sort of body of people who are selecting software and product. I'd like to see that integrated into the engineering teams, because I believe software engineers, they know what they want to work with and how they want to work. It's then important you make a connected set of decisions, but we'll come back to that. So first of all, I'd say I don't think the CIO is, if you're targeting the CIO in a software sell, you've probably come at it the wrong way, right? Because I think most CIOs are going to look at their experts and the people that they trust around them to say, just give me a recommendation and I'm going to sign it off.
Okay.
Look, I think then it's about how do you influence those people. Look, typically, I think they're not influenced by selling techniques. I suspect they're influenced by case study and by reference and by stories, by what people are saying, what their peers are saying. I've always felt, actually, I'm a big believer in, I would look to my network before I would look to an independent analyst business to give me a sense of capability. Why? Because you'll know this, any software is capable of anything. But you've still got to implement it, configure it, adopt it, train it, use it well. And so I think sometimes when you're talking to vendors, you're getting a sense of what the software, I'm just using software as an example, could be hardware. You get a sense of what that could do. When you talk to the network, when you talk to your peers or your network, you get a sense of what it can do, how easy is it to implement, what's the support from the vendor like, what are some of the pitfalls, Who did you go to when you had a problem? So you get a much more rounded 360 view. Do you know what I mean? So some random thoughts, and then I'll pause. But yeah, I would say CIO is not the person to sell to.
Yeah.
It's the people who's the CIO is going to look at to say, give me the recommendation. And then, yeah, it's that 360-degree view of what, why, how, when around a product, rather than just product capability. Because, you know, if you look at enough products in the same class, it's hard to tell the difference after a while when you're looking at different features and functions. Was that what you were driving at, Matt? Is that the question?
Indeed. And you're right that we could break this down all day long. But there was, you know, because I know we're short of time, so there was just one follow-on question that I had from that, and that's you said that, you know, when you get to the group CIO level, you shouldn't really be targeting me to get a technology conversation going. So what would actually, you know, at what stage do you get involved? Are you literally just there to sign off on the recommendation of your head of infrastructure, of your, you know, head of IT? Or are you still going to be engaged in a technology discussion at some phase, you know, where you actually do want to see the business value case, etc.? You know, what's your...
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good way to put it. Look, I think there's a life cycle of any purchase, right? And starts with, you know, one thing that all CIOs will be involved in. Well, what's my sourcing strategy? Who am I looking to buy from? You know, how much consolidation do I want to see? And I'm thinking maybe more about services now. I think services tends to be, I would be much more engaged in a services buy than I would a product buy. Okay. Because ultimately that's an ongoing relationship. You know, typically you want to have very senior relationships with the services. You would with product people, the big product vendors, you know. But I think at the outset of the journey, setting the direction of, well, what's our sourcing strategy? What are we buying? What are we building? You know, what mix do we want? What's the level of sort of consolidation are we looking for, and where would we buy from? I think that's very CIO territory, right? And that's with the leadership team of technology for me. And then obviously applying that through all the different engineering domains, that's down to the teams to do that.
Yeah. So,
and then it comes,
I do apologize for interrupting you. What you're doing there is you're, you know, as the CIO, it comes back to that thing about the business objectives. You're setting the scene for saying, this is what the business has to do. And this is probably what we're going to have to do from a technology standpoint. We're probably going to have to start moving stuff more to the cloud. We're probably going to have to do X, Y, and Z. The actual technologies which facilitate those transformations that you're setting, you're not so much involved in those.
Yeah, but my teams are. So I don't believe that we've got to make my job is to set the direction, put in place the controls that means that when people follow that direction, we're making a really sensible set of connected decisions, right? Because there's an awful lot of, you know, particularly if you work scale agile with lots of engineering teams, there's loads of decisions in this middle bit. If you're not careful, can be slightly, you know, off at tangents. So for me, it's about set the direction. What's your sourcing strategy? Who am I buying for? What am I buying? How am I buying? Okay, once that's all set and we've got some clear guidelines, let these people operate. Put some controls in place to make sure you're making a sensible set of decisions.
Yeah.
When you get to the big choices, yeah, I'm like anything that comes across my table, I'm asking questions and challenging on why have we made some of those decisions. But I can't recall a time. Right, there's never been a time where I've said, "Oh, it shouldn't be product X, it should be product Y." Never do that, because it would disempower my whole organization. And then the last piece of the journey is, of course, for the big relationships, product or service. Then, of course, I want an eyeball-to-eyeball relationship with the senior people there, because, you know, typically, if you're implementing a major software platform, there will be times when it won't go well, right? We all know that. Same's true of hardware. And so for me, it's really important then to have the ongoing strategic relationship. For me, that's about when things aren't going well, if I'm honest. But then only when things are going well, I want my team and all the experts to have that influence in that product roadmap and else. So just to summarize, I think it's direction setting, strategy, and allow people to make choices quickly. Of course, a bit of checks and balances as we're making big acquisition, and then manage the relationship after that. That would be the CIO's role in vendor and management. And look, there's some, you know, having a really good vendor management function is mission critical for a CIO. So I've been very lucky. I've had a great one at Sainsbury's, because procurement will help you get to an outcome, a procurement outcome.
Yeah.
But once that contract's established, it really needs managing, right? To be an intelligent customer, which is the job of the CIO, I put a lot of emphasis on vendor management, on people, real, great people who are spending time with our strategic partners on how we're doing, how we're performing, where we're going next, are we aligned? Almost contract between the contract end and start points. Actually managing the vendor, and we get a lot of positive feedback actually at Sainsbury's, because the team that does that, run by Andy Negleski, for me, have done a really good job in sort of upping our game in the way we work with partners once we've agreed to buy something, rather than just the procurement process.
Okay. Well, look, lots of insights there, and truly amazing to hear it from such a a high level perspective. The thought that goes in behind that strategy of creating transformation and setting the scene is wicked. So thank you very much, Phil, for sharing everything that you have done. I want to give the last couple of minutes, if you wanted to, if there's anything that you personally want to share. I know you're going on a different journey away from the group CIO now. Anything that you want to share, I will be happy to give you the floor.
Oh, that's really kind, Matt. I think well done for doing this thing. I think it's, when you and I talked, I think your drive was to try and sort of rule together a little bit, sellers and buyers in the industry, and I think that's really important. And good for you for doing it. My message would be, never been a better time to be a technologist. Honestly, I'm so excited about what technology can continue to do for businesses. And all I would say is, if you're on my side of the fence, if you're somebody aspiring to be a CIO, just get yourself into a business that thinks progressively about technology, recognizes the opportunity as well as the constraints of costly technical environments, because that will set you up for success. And then just know the business better than anybody else, and then I think you're perfect. And then on the vendor side, look, the best thing you can do as a vendor is just have real intimacy with what your CIO and what the IT team wants to do. Okay. What are they trying to solve? What are their problems? Offer them solutions to some of their problems rather than the thing you want to sell. And I think if you can get that intimacy, and you'll start just landing in context for the teams, and you build trust really quickly. So, and the more we can do that as a community, the faster technology or transformation will go, which is what we all want.
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, Phil, that was a fantastic conversation. We'll leave it there, and amazing to speak to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure.
Cheers.